I slowed as I turned onto Ridgewood Lane, the snow muffling the hum of my tires. Every house shimmered with lights, red, gold, warm. Families inside clinked glasses, told stories, laughed. But our house, the one with the blue shutters and the crooked wreath Dad hung every year, stood dim. Cold. Unwelcoming. I parked at the curb, engine ticking as it cooled. The gift bag crinkled in my hands, simple, silver, understated. My breath fogged in the air. I stepped out, boots crunching the snow, and made my way up the porch. The door opened before I knocked. Jacob. His eyes widened, then narrowed. He didn't move aside. Celeste says this isn't a place for losers, he said, voice flat. I blinked. What? He looked away. You shouldn't have come. The porch light buzzed above us. Inside, I heard laughter, clinking glasses, the swell of Jingle Bell Rock. The scent of cinnamon drifted out. Then the door closed. I stared at the wood grain, numb. My hand still clutched the ribbon of the gift bag. The cold bit through my coat, but I couldn't move. Somewhere inside, Celeste laughed. Not at me, not exactly, but near enough. I turned and walked back to my car. 12 years old. I remember standing in this exact spot, my nose pressed to the frosty window while Dad carved the turkey. Celeste and Mom were dancing to Nat King Cole, holding mugs of cocoa. I was singing, off-key, but nobody minded. I'd never felt warmer. Now, my fingers gripped the same handle, except instead of cocoa, it was a gift bag no one would open. Back then, the lights glowed from every corner. Now? Just the wreath and the porch bulb, flickering like a warning. I used to think those moments were promises. Maybe they were just decorations. What changed? Or did I just grow old enough to see it? Back in the car, I dropped the gift bag on the passenger seat. It sat there like something dead. I adjusted the mirror, caught my own eyes. My lips trembled. I pressed them tight. I should have known, I whispered. Of course this would happen. A chime. My phone lit up with a text from Celeste. Don't make a scene. I didn't reply. I wiped under my eyes. No mascara streaks. Good, I said softly. They always thought I'd cry. That I'd beg to be let in. That I'd play the part. Not tonight. As I pulled away from the curb, I decided to check my mailbox, one of the last little habits I kept from when I still lived here. Most of it was junk. A flyer for snow removal. A credit card offer. Then I saw it, a thick, white envelope. My name, printed cleanly across the front. I opened it. My fingers trembled, not from the cold. A property document. My name. Still listed. Still a co-owner. I laughed. Just once. It came out sharp. They locked me out. Of my house? I whispered. There, on the sidewalk, under a street lamp flickering like it couldn't decide whether to live or die, I saw it clearly. They thought I'd be too tired to fight. Too broken to care. But they forgot who my father raised. Have you ever been shut out by the very people who swore they'd always be your family? Have you ever swallowed your voice to keep the peace, until silence started to taste like poison? Tell me, when did you realize silence wasn't kindness? I'm listening. I stared at the house one last time through the rearview mirror. My fingers traced the signature line on the deed. They locked out the wrong person, I said. Then I drove. The snow fell harder behind me, erasing my tire tracks. I didn't look back. The lock clicked beneath my hand, and the door creaked open to the same quiet I'd left behind this morning. No blinking lights. No pine-scented candles. Just the soft amber glow of one kitchen lamp, still on from last night. I stepped in, shut the door, and stood there, coat still on, the cold clinging to my sleeves like it had followed me home. I set the gift bag gently on the counter. The silence felt fuller than before, like it had thickened in my absence. Even the low hum of the refrigerator was too much. It felt like I'd broken something just by entering. I didn't take off my shoes. I didn't move past the doorway. I just stood there and whispered to no one. They didn't just lock me out of a house. They locked me out of a life. I wasn't sure if I meant it to hurt. But it did. I slid the bag toward me and opened it, one gift at a time. A small tin of pecan cookies. I'd baked them late last night. Dad's favorite. He used to sneak them before dinner when we were little, hiding crumbs like secrets. He never admitted it. Mom always knew. Next was a hardcover, wrapped in brown paper and tied with green ribbon. I peeled it back slowly. The spine read The Little Foxes, a first edition. Mom adored it but never finished. She used to leave it dog-eared on the couch, like a trail back to herself. Tucked inside the front cover was a note in my handwriting. Mom, maybe we can finish this together this year? I traced the edge of the page, then let it fall open, but didn't close it. Then there was the doll, a limited edition Clara from the Nutcracker. Evie had drawn it last spring. She has to have blue eyes, she'd said. And ballet shoes, not just slippers. I remembered waiting in a 2-hour Black Friday line to grab it before they sold out. I unwrapped it from its tissue and placed it next to the book, face up. 3 gifts. Chosen with care. All staying here. I snapped a photo. Just the items. No caption. Then typed a message to Celeste. I left them at the door. No one answered. That's okay. They were never really for you. The text showed, read. Then the typing dots appeared and vanished. I stared for a moment, then deleted the whole thread. Message. History. Everything. Closure doesn't come wrapped, I muttered, setting the phone face down. The snow outside was falling slower now, but it had already covered my footsteps from earlier. As if I'd never been there. I walked over to the window and sat on the edge of the couch. The radiator clicked behind me, still working harder than it needed to. Christmas used to mean budgeting, making lists, sacrificing my own wants so everyone else would get what they asked for. I hadn't bought myself a gift in 10 years. Maybe longer. I opened the drawer beside the couch and pulled out a slip of paper, folded, yellowed at the edges. The handwriting was mine. A list titled, What I'd Get Myself If I Mattered. A leather-bound journal. A weekend in Taos. Noise-canceling headphones. A pair of boots not bought secondhand. I read through it twice. Then folded it again, but didn't put it away. Have you ever bought gifts for people who wouldn't even say thank you? If you could give your younger self one thing this Christmas, just one, what would it be? Tell me, out loud, or write it below. I want to know. Because tonight, maybe that's the gift I'm finally willing to give. I turned toward the counter again. The book lay open. The doll stared at the ceiling, forever waiting for a child who'd never unwrap her. I picked up the property deed, still creased from my back pocket, and ran my thumb along the edge. They forgot I'm still a name on that house, I said to no one. Then I placed it next to the untouched cookies. The next day, I woke to silence, not peace. The kind of quiet that settles over you like a question you can't answer. Snow still fell outside my apartment, dusting the windowsill in soft defiance of the sunlight trying to creep in. I made a cup of coffee, stared at the steam rising, and felt nothing, until my phone buzzed. A calendar notification popped up, Christmas budget review. I stared at it, breath held. It was a recurring reminder I'd set years ago, back when I thought being thoughtful meant planning, predicting every need, every shortfall, every unspoken request. I clicked it away, but the sting lingered. The budget spreadsheet opened like muscle memory. I hadn't touched it in a year, but there it was. Tabbed by year, 2012 to 2022. With each click, the past unfolded in rows and columns. Evie, school clothes. Celeste, rent help. Mom, copay. Dad, car repair. $signs and dates. Notes I used to jot down like confessions to myself. There's something soul-crushing about realizing your love had a ledger. I printed out 10 years of transactions. Each page thick with numbers, but all I saw were the faces behind them. I remembered the phone call, Celeste sobbing, saying Evie had to go to urgent care. I wired money in under 5 minutes. I learned a month later it was to cover a loan shark. Another page, the foreclosure scare. Mom's voice was clipped, professional, like she was reading a script. I paid the debt in full. She never said thank you, just told me, you did your duty. That's what daughters do. I stood in the middle of my living room holding the papers. All those times I skipped dinners, declined trips, let promotions pass. Just to stay available, to catch the next falling piece. I wasn't their sister, I whispered. I was their silent investor. I cleared the wall beside the bookshelf, pulled out my old whiteboard from the closet. With a black marker and a drawer full of colored thread, I began mapping the timeline. Every year got a line. Every name a color. Events, dollar amounts, phone calls, all pinned with surgical precision. What emerged wasn't a family history. It looked more like a crime board. Celeste's thread was the thickest. Her knots, the most tangled. I traced back to the week I skipped groceries so I could wire money. I lived on oatmeal and tea while they posted brunch photos from a ski lodge. I kept them alive, I muttered, eyes burning, and they made me disposable. I turned to the camera on my desk and clicked it on. My voice was level, but colder than I'd heard it before. Have you ever been told your worth is how much you give? I let the silence stretch, longer than comfort allowed. When was the last time someone made your love feel like a contract? I asked. Comment below. I want to hear it. Say it out loud. I slid one of the printed sheets into an envelope and labeled it with a Sharpie, for Celeste's taxes. Maybe she can write off her conscience, I said, half smiling. The kettle clicked behind me. I didn't move. Instead, I reached for the old voice recorder buried in my drawer. I hadn't touched it since Dad passed. But I remembered, clear as glass, the night he whispered something, low and urgent, from his hospital bed. Don't let them drain you dry, Marla. You were born to build, not bleed. His voice crackled through the speaker now, softer than I remembered but unmistakable. I found the file titled, Final Instructions, R. Ashby. His will, recorded by his request, for Raymond's ears only. Hearing it again now didn't just validate me. It steadied me. Dad knew. He saw it all before I did. That's why he made me co-owner. That's why the house still had my name. They'd counted on me to forget. To forgive. To fund. I stared at the final printout still in my hands. All the numbers. All the names. I walked to the fireplace, tossed in the file, but not the backup. The flames caught quick, greedy. I turned back to the window. Snow kept falling, quiet and merciless. I dialed Raymond Ashby. I think it's time we talk about the house, Raymond. And what they've forgotten. Raymond Ashby's office still smelled faintly of tobacco and leather, the same scent I remembered clinging to my father's coat. The kind of place where truth lived inside folders, not words. The brass plaque on the door hadn't changed in 20 years. Neither had Raymond's tie, same navy blue, same precise knot. He looked up from his papers when I walked in. Marla, he said, standing halfway, a mix of surprise and inevitability in his voice. You look like you've come for answers. I think I already have them, I said. He motioned for me to sit. The chair creaked under my coat. Raymond opened a file that looked like it hadn't been touched since Dad died, Quinn Estate, emergency clauses. The folder was thick with time, yellowed at the edges. Your father was a careful man, he began, sliding a page toward me. He left protections in place. You're still co-owner of the family home. Celeste tried to revoke it twice, once after she got married, once after your father's funeral. Both failed. My name stared back at me from the paper, black ink and permanence. He told me, Raymond continued, that one day they'd forget who kept the lights on. He made sure you couldn't be erased. I swallowed. There was no victory in it, only stillness. Then I guess it's time I remember who I am on paper. Raymond nodded. Let's start there. He pulled out a clean document, freshly typed, the title sharp in bold. Notice of Revocation, Familial Financial Support. It was my declaration of independence, dressed in legal terms. I signed slowly, my hand steady, my heart silent. This will end any expectation of continued financial or emotional obligation, Raymond said softly. They'll feel it. They already did, I replied. When they locked the door. I left his office with a copy folded neatly in my purse. The weight of 10 years, compressed into one page. Outside, the wind had picked up, the kind that made you tighten your scarf and your resolve. I passed the little cafe on 3rd where we used to meet, our family spot. I stepped inside. The waitress recognized me, nodded politely. I took my old seat by the window. 5 years ago, this was where Celeste handed me the bill on my birthday. You've always got the card, don't you, sis? She'd said, smiling for the waiter. Doris had laughed nervously, stirring her tea. That night, I'd bought Evie a bracelet, silver with a charm shaped like a heart. Celeste called it cheap. Said, you're always the one with nothing to say but plenty to give. And I'd smiled through it, paid the bill, swallowed the words. Now I sat in the same booth, tracing the wood grain, remembering how small I'd felt that night, and realizing I wasn't anymore. The air tasted different now. Cleaner. When I stepped outside, snow was beginning to fall again, gentle flakes, drifting like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence I'd finally finished. I walked without rushing. People hurried past me, arms full of shopping bags, voices bright with belonging. I didn't envy them. How do you know you're free? I asked quietly, almost to the wind. When giving doesn't feel like bleeding anymore. I turned my phone camera toward myself, recording in one take. If you've ever walked away from a toxic tie, drop a snowflake emoji in the comments. Sometimes the cleanest break is the quietest. A man played piano under the awning of a bookstore, his fingers trembling from the cold but still graceful. I stopped to listen. The melody, slow, broken, familiar. I didn't cry. I just breathed, the cold air filling spaces that used to ache. A few blocks later, I stopped outside the women's shelter. Inside, a volunteer was wrapping a scarf around a little girl's neck. The girl laughed, spinning in her oversized boots. Giving doesn't make you weak, I murmured. But giving to people who only take. That's how you bleed out. I stood there longer than I meant to, watching warmth bloom between strangers. Then my phone vibrated, 2 unread messages. Celeste, Doris. I deleted them both without opening. By the time I got home, the night had deepened. I took the revocation notice from my bag and pinned it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. For the first time, it looked like art. Then I sat down, opened my laptop, and started a new email. Subject line, House Title Inquiry. Before I could type another word, my phone buzzed again. Celeste. Evie's crying, the text read. Hope you're happy. I stared at the screen, the snowlight glinting off the glass, and whispered, for the first time in years I think I am. The screen lit up again. Celeste's name, no photo, just words. The kids are upset. You promised. Was all that nothing? Long. Emotional. Manipulative in the way only family can master. I stared at it for longer than I should have. My thumb hovered above the reply box, the habit tugging hard. Say something, explain yourself, fix it like always. Instead, I tapped, info. Then, delete contact. No confirmation bubble, no final warning. Just a soft beep, and she was gone. The silence after that wasn't empty, it was earned. The fridge hummed louder, the snowfall beyond the window softened the room with its hush. I breathed in, long and cold, like preparing for surgery. I had spent so much of my life waiting for my turn to speak, nodding through decisions that cost me peace. Tonight, I said nothing and meant everything. I didn't expect a follow-up message. For once, I wasn't waiting. I opened my laptop. The inbox was still open to the Quinn family thread, emails stretching years, all neatly titled, Help for Mom, Quick Loan, Evie's School Fee, Christmas Gift Ideas. My replies always read the same, of course. What do you need? I scrolled back to the one from last December. Celeste had written, emergency, can you help with the deposit? My response was immediate, and the check I signed had 12,000 reasons not to be. She'd watched over my shoulder as I filled it out, smiling like a cat about to get cream. 12,000 for silence. For being good. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. In the reflection, my face looked tired, but not unsure. You don't have to accept the invitation to their version of family, I whispered. A quote from some article one read once, probably dismissed at the time. Now it clung to me like armor. The apartment settled into night. I left the lights low, and let the quiet stretch out. At 2:04 a.m., the screen buzzed again, unknown number. I didn't answer. Voicemail picked up. I sat still, listening to it record. Then came a voice, small, familiar. Marla, can you come? Evie. Then another voice muffled in the background. A woman's. No, not now. I played the message once. Then muted my phone and placed it face down. If they only reach for me during emergencies, then they never reached for me at all. That isn't family. That's insurance. I stood by the window and watched the snow glitter under the street lamp. Calm inside. No chaos to manage. No demands to fulfill. Just me. For the first time, just me. I turned from the window and locked the phone in a drawer. I faced the camera. No filter, no lights. Just me in the dark. Have you ever waited for people to say your name only to find you erased it yourself first? I let it hang in the air. Write down the last time someone reached you and the first time you stopped picking up. Another pause. Share when you realized staying silent was the loudest thing you could do. No music, just breath, and falling snow. I walked to the entry table and picked up the gift, Evie's doll, the one they never opened. Still wrapped, still perfect. I stepped outside, down the walkway to the house I still legally half-owned. The porch light glowed like an old wound reopened. I placed the gift box right in the center of the welcome mat. Took one photo, not to post, just proof, for myself. Then I messaged Celeste the image. Left this here, no place for losers, right? The read receipt came fast. No reply. I didn't wait. I powered down the phone and walked home without looking back. Inside, I locked the door, clicked off the outside light, and pulled the house deed from the drawer. The snow tapped softly at the window like someone trying not to be heard. I looked at the paper again. My name, still there. They'll run out of games, I murmured, before I run out of patience. The ringing started at 2 a.m., sharp, shrill, an alarm bell in a room too still. I blinked against the light of my phone screen. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer. But my thumb slid anyway, hesitating over the green icon. I waited and let it ring. The voicemail started. A pause. Then a voice, thin, tired. Di Marla Condoy. Evie. Her voice cracked, childlike and dry. Then a second voice in the background, an adult, impatient. No, not now. My hand didn't tremble this time. I stared at the screen, heart quiet but steady. I pressed decline. Then, block contact. The call cut out. I lay back, eyes open, tracking the slow, steady swirl of the ceiling fan above. My chest didn't ache, not like before. I remembered grocery bills I paid when I was skipping dinners. Remembered letting my fridge stay empty so theirs wouldn't. Helping them didn't save me from being discarded. I whispered, helping them doesn't mean they won't abandon you. Snow scratched faintly at the windows, like fingernails trying to get in. By morning, I was already awake. I sipped weak coffee and opened my email. Subject: Family crisis, immediate response needed. It was from Doris. Short, biting. You've cost us everything. Walter would be ashamed. Attached were PDFs, lists of debts, unpaid bills, expired utilities. My name wasn't in the "oh" column, but it was all over the "paid by" column. Past bailouts, quietly assumed. I whispered, I paid for this. And somehow, I'm the one in debt. I didn't reply. I didn't forward. I didn't explain. I right-clicked the folder titled Family Requests. Deleted it. The laptop clicked closed like a gavel. I stood and walked down the narrow hallway of my apartment. The snow outside made everything quieter, like a church at midnight. I passed the guest room door. Once, Celeste and Evie had stayed in there. Laughed in there. Called it home base. Now it was closed. I pressed my ear against it. I didn't hear anything, but in my mind, their voices echoed. You're our only hope, we need you. Lies disguised as love. I thought of my father's voice, soft, rough with regret, from an old voicemail. Don't lend them your warmth until they earn your respect. He knew. He always knew. I whispered, I've been answering calls for a family that swapped my name for debts. I turned away. Back to the living room. Back to me. I turned to face the camera. My voice low but steady. Has someone ever called you when it was convenient then ignored you forever? I looked off screen. Comment the time you refused a call to protect your peace. I raised my phone to show the screen. Blocked contact. Unknown number. Healing begins when you stop answering the familiar ring. A breath. Share your story. Let's stop waiting for permission to walk away. I ended the video and uploaded it without edits. Then I walked to the kitchen table, pulled out a checkbook, and wrote, Family support, ceased. On the line, I wrote one word in firm, cursive pen, no. I signed it, sealed it in an envelope marked, Family Office, ceased aid. Next I placed the revocation document Raymond Ashby had prepared. Fully signed now. And next to that, the deed. My name still bold, still legal. I walked to the closet and picked up the untouched gift bag, still holding the scarf I knit for Doris last year. I didn't open it, just set it to the side. I will no longer fund my own erasure. Snow still fell, brushing soft against the glass like a secret. I opened the window, breathed in the clean air, and looked toward the porch. The house across the street was dark now. Closed. My phone buzzed. Celeste Quinn Bayard, urgent call. I scrolled to blocked contacts. Created a new entry. Label, Family HQ. The folder had lived at the back of my file drawer, under tax records and old warranties. A thick, weathered manila envelope labeled in bold Sharpie, Family Aid 2010 to 2022. The kind of thing you only create when you've lived through too many IOUs and start needing proof that you once existed beyond the helping hand. I slid it open. Receipts spilled out like quiet confessions. Utility bills in Celeste's name, signed checks to summer camps, yellowing slips labeled, emergency dental, tuition, winter coat fund. Some with my handwriting, some with theirs, none repaid. Flipping through them, one line repeated like a bad refrain. Marla paid. I touched a note paperclipped to a $2,500 cashier's check, March 2018. Celeste had watched me sign it. She smiled wide, kissed my cheek, and said, "We'll figure this out together." She didn't ask me to stay afterward. Nobody ever did. At the back of the folder, a blank worksheet. At the top, Marla Quinn, total contributed. I added up the numbers. The total knocked the wind out of me. I'd outspent myself. Quietly. Year after year, until the giving had become the definition. I pressed print. The sound of the printer filled the room, steady, purposeful. Page after page dropped into the tray like a cascade of facts. Loan to C. Bayard, March 2018. Utilities, Celeste and Household, January 2020. Rent paid, Doris Quinn, August 2016. I sorted the sheets into 3 piles. Recognize, ignore, expose. I remembered a quote from Maya Angelou, "When you know better, you do better." I knew better now. I found it in the back of the folder, an old photo. I must have been 12, smiling between Walter and Doris. Celeste stood off to the side, hands behind her back, lips in a half smirk. I used to love that picture. Now, it was context. I laid it next to a payment slip dated 2022. $1,450 for property taxes they never mentioned were overdue. I'd paid it anyway. Walter's voice echoed in my head, his old voicemail from years ago. "Marla, keep your name, keep your value." I tore the photo in 2. The sound made me flinch, but only for a second. "They cheated me with thank yous they never meant," I whispered. I turned toward the camera. No makeup, no filter. Just me and the silence. How many of you have a folder like this, proof of your kindness, stored away like a receipt? I held up a handful of the papers. Drop the word, receipt, in the comments if you've ever kept one. I added, kindness isn't a statement, it's a boundary. And finally, what are you still paying for that you stopped using? Then I picked up the next stack, fresh off the printer. The revocation attachment Raymond Ashby had asked me to sign. I double-checked everything, then rang his number. Raymond, send certified mail to Celeste Quinn Bayard and Doris Quinn. Full asset revocation, effective immediately. My voice didn't shake. I'm no longer funding the stories I don't believe in. He simply said, understood. I slid the signed pages into an envelope, sealed it, labeled it, Family, Terminated Aid. Next I stacked the evidence printouts in height order. The tallest pile stood like a pillar of quiet resolve. I closed the manila folder for the last time, held it against my chest for one breath, then placed it in the file box marked, Final. I walked past the window. The Quinn Bayard house still glowed across the street. Warm lights, untouched snow, and a silence that used to hurt but now simply existed. I sat down, pulled up the confirmation window, and clicked, Send. They'll wake up, I said softly, and find the house locked in accounts as well as doors. I was reviewing property tax ledgers when the lobby door snapped open downstairs. Its echo always traveled up the stairwell like a warning. I didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Celeste Quinn Bayard walked in like she owned the ceiling. 2 associates in sharp suits flanked her like twin shields. I stayed seated. "You're making this harder than it has to be," she said, her coat still clinging with snow. "For family. For your definition of it," I said without lifting my eyes. Mine was different. She stepped into the conference room, palm slamming down on the edge of the table between us. This little power play? Her voice was coiled. It's reckless. You're hurting people. I looked up, calm as a locked vault. I stopped being your silent account number. The room fell into the kind of silence that thickens around people who used to love each other wrong. Celeste gestured. One of her men placed a tablet on the table, tapped play. A video loaded, slideshow of photos with donation receipts. One flashed with my name. Donation, Quinn Family Relief Fund. A fund I never signed off on. My signature had been altered. A voiceover played, edited, spliced phrases pulled from old voicemails. You see? Celeste crossed her arms. You were their lifeline. You owe them. I leaned back slowly in my chair, hands folded neatly. Your lies already see through. Your power isn't. I stood, walked out, left the tablet on the table. The door shut behind me with a click that sounded like closure. The twilight was falling when I drove home. Fort Collins drifted by in quiet white. The street lamps came on one by one like old men lighting cigars. I glanced in the mirror, then forward. The house came into view ahead, the Quinn Bayard house. Its porch light glowed with the same warmth I used to think meant belonging. I parked, stepped out. The air bit at my cheeks, cold and cleansing. From the sidewalk, I stared up at the second-floor window, my old room. The curtains had changed. The house hadn't. I remembered Walter once telling me, "This house is yours too, Marla. Don't let anyone tell you differently." I took out my phone. Snapped a picture. I walked away from their world, I whispered. Now I walk past their walls. I turned to the camera. Have you ever entered a room where your past felt like an accusation? My breath clouded in the cold. Type, yes, if you've ever stood outside your own home feeling like a stranger. I paused. Strength isn't staying when you're unwanted. It's knowing which doors never deserved you. The comments would come later. For now, I kept walking. Back at my apartment, I noticed a sealed envelope tucked under the doormat. Heavy legal cardstock. No return address, just the words stamped in bold, "Cease and desist, Quinn Bayard Estate." Inside, it read like a threat written by someone who forgot what leverage felt like. You are hereby ordered to cease interference with all Quinn Bayard property matters. No signature from a lawyer. Just a name, D. Quinn. I held the paper steady, no shake in my hand. I remembered the years, bailing them out, covering their debts, refilling their pantries when mine were empty. Tonight, I listened to the silence instead. I took a sticky note. Wrote one word, watch. I stuck it to the envelope and placed it beside the deed and the print stack. The printer beside me hummed, slow, strong, steady. Not backup. Proof. I closed my laptop. Checked my phone. One new notification. Meeting scheduled by Celeste Quinn Bayard 9 a.m. tomorrow. I smiled. Not wide. Just real. Tomorrow I'll bring the evidence. And she'll see the power she thought she kept was mine all along. I woke before dawn, the kind of cold morning where the air feels heavier than silence. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other, I sat by the window as Fort Collins blinked awake under a thin gray sky. My desk was already lined, documents, printed statements, a flash drive, and the folder labeled, Evidence, Final Copy. Raymond Ashby's name appeared on the screen. I answered before the first ring finished. You're ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for years, I said. The call ended, but the steadiness stayed. I opened the folder, money transfers, falsified donation receipts, even a transcript from Kelly confirming the charity fund scam. Every line was a timestamp of betrayal. I aligned them neatly. Order against chaos. Proof against manipulation. On impulse, I opened the family group chat. I didn't type anything. I just listened. Their voices spilled through the speaker, Celeste, Doris, and Jacob, talking fast, panicking. Damage control, PR timing, she'll ruin everything. I smiled faintly. They're strategizing like criminals. I muted the call. For the first time, I didn't feel outnumbered. The phone rang again. Celeste. Her tone was honeyed, deliberate. Marla, let's not make this ugly. We can fix this as sisters. You never wanted a sister, Celeste, I replied. You wanted a sponsor. Silence, then the pivot. You're destroying what's left of this family. I'm not destroying anything, I said softly. I'm revealing what's already destroyed. Her breath caught. You think people will believe you? I tapped, record. They don't have to. You just confirmed everything yourself. A pause. I could hear her breathing, sharp and defensive. Then, click, the call ended. I waited. 10 seconds later, another buzz. Kelly. Play it on speaker, her text read. I did. Kelly's voice cut clean through the static. Celeste, this is being logged. There was a long, brittle pause. You have no right, Celeste started. Kelly didn't let her finish. You used Marla's name for fraudulent activity. That's a federal crime. The line went dead. I leaned back. The quiet afterward felt like oxygen. Silence finally sounds honest, I murmured. The clock ticked. My heartbeat matched it, steady, rhythmic, alive. I turned the camera on myself, voice low and even. Have you ever watched someone lie so smoothly they almost convinced you it was your fault? I let the silence stretch before continuing. That's what emotional debt looks like. I leaned closer to the lens. Comment, free, if you've ever walked away from guilt that wasn't yours. A pause. Boundaries aren't walls, they're proof you value peace. I ended the recording, no edits needed. Then I went back to the files. I attached the audio recording to an email and sent it to Raymond and Kelly. Within minutes, Kelly replied, breach verified. We're proceeding. The printer hummed again, soft, relentless. Each confirmation slip slid out like an exhale. I watched the stack grow, saying aloud to no one, you built your empire on my silence. Now it crumbles on my voice. Somewhere deep inside, my father's voice surfaced, an echo from a world less cruel. Speak once, speak true, and let it echo. I forwarded the files to the family group chat. No message, no explanation. Just the attachments. One by one, the receipts changed from unread to seen. Celeste, Doris, Jacob. No replies. Just read. I sat by the window again, the world outside dusted white. My phone lit up, Celeste's number flashing across the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. A text appeared a moment later, we need to talk. You've gone too far. I smiled faintly, resting the phone beside my coffee. I haven't gone far enough. The snow had been falling since just before dawn, blanketing the street like nature's clean slate. I stood at the window with a cup of black coffee, watching it build in silence. The kind of silence that tells you something's about to break. At 7:03, Kelly called. The hearing is on, Celeste's lawyers filed a counterclaim. I took another sip. Then it's the right day to end it. The files were already laid out, neatly organized, each page marked by yellow tabs. Evidence curated by the very hands they once depended on. A note from Walter fell from the Bible as I tucked it into my bag. In the margin, his faded handwriting, truth doesn't shout, it stands. I whispered back, let's stand, and headed out into the storm. Outside the courthouse, Celeste posed, chin high, flanked by her attorney like a queen on trial day. Doris stood slightly behind them, hands clenched around her purse strap, her eyes scanning everything but me. Kelly met me near the steps. A simple nod. We didn't need words. This had all been said already, in receipts, in transfers, in silence. Inside, Raymond Ashby moved like he'd rehearsed for this moment his entire career. Exhibit after exhibit laid out. Signatures, unauthorized transfers, documents that spoke louder than any of us could. When Raymond held up the signed loan document, Celeste snapped. That's a lie, a fabrication. The judge didn't flinch. Mrs. Bayard, sit down. The snow tapped against the windows as if the world outside wanted to listen in. Celeste stared down at the table. Her confidence bled from her face, and I felt no triumph, just the weight of truth finally being heard. Outside, the press had gathered. Someone had leaked news of the acid audit. Celeste charged toward me. You ruined us. I stood still. No, Celeste. You used us. Doris's voice trembled as she approached. You girls were supposed to protect the family name. I looked at her, not angry, not cruel. Just tired. Protecting lies isn't love, mother. Kelly stood a few feet away, phone discreetly recording. Snow swirled between us. This moment would become the testimony in the snow. Celeste turned too sharply and slipped. Her heel skidded on the ice. I reached out on instinct, but stopped halfway. She caught herself, glaring, eyes filled with something more dangerous than anger, shame. Later, sitting in front of the camera, I spoke plainly. Sometimes standing for truth means standing alone. I paused. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience where you really stop to look fear in the face." Looking directly at the lens, I added, stand, if you've ever faced family and chosen yourself. A softer voice followed, "It's not betrayal to stop being the scapegoat." And then, I let the silence say what I couldn't. Kelly and I found a cafe nearby. The windows fogged quickly, giving us a cocoon from the cold. "You could have gloated," she said, cupping her mug. I shook my head. Closure doesn't need an audience. We sat in peace for a moment, both knowing this wasn't just an ending. It was a turning. I told her about Walter's note. How he never yelled, never demanded. But he left truth where it would eventually be found. Then the email came through on my phone. Pending property transfer, Quinn Bayard residence to Marla Quinn. I smiled, a quiet curve of the mouth. "Not revenge," I whispered. "Restoration." Outside, the snow had started to melt, revealing patches of wet sidewalk, soft earth beneath all that cold. I stood at the window as Celeste's car disappeared down the street. My phone buzzed again. A message from Raymond. "There's more. You need to see this document from your father's estate." I stared at the falling snow, slower now, less accusing. "So it wasn't over after all," I said softly. The email subject line read, "Final transfer completed, Quinn Bayard residence." I opened it slowly, not with urgency, but with care. The attached deed was clean. My name stood alone, no co-signers, no inherited mess, no asterisks. Just Marla Quinn. Signatures, notary seal, recorded and logged. I didn't feel triumph. No tears, no fist in the air. Just a breath. A real, deep breath. In the stillness, Walter's voice came to me, from an old voice memo saved years ago. "Your signature is your shield." I closed the laptop. The screen went black, and there I was, my reflection faint but steady. "Home is no longer just where you lived," I whispered. "It's where you were counted." My phone buzzed on the counter. One new message, from Doris Quinn. "I hope you find what you were looking for. Mom." No apology, no questions, just a line neatly folded between distance and dismissal. I read it twice, then again, then never again. I placed the phone down and didn't type back. Didn't save it. Instead, I deleted the contact, family requests. Her silence used to mean absence. Now, it just meant conclusion. A mother's words can come too late, or arrive wrapped in the disguise of meaning. This one didn't wear either. The screen dimmed, and I left it face down. Snow was falling again. I stepped outside without gloves, letting the cold remind me I was still here. The air felt clean. My footprints led away from the house, not to it. The park was quiet, except for the whisper of wind moving through the bare trees. Streetlights threw halos onto the sidewalk. I walked until I reached the bench by the pond, where the water hadn't fully frozen, just jagged lines of ice breaking up its surface like veins. I sat. No one around. Just me. Me and memory. Evie's voice floated back, soft and unassuming. "Dee Marla." I looked down at the broken ice. "I survived the freeze," I murmured. "Now I choose the thaw." Later, I turned to the camera. "Have you ever crossed the threshold of silence and realized the other side was freedom?" I let that sit. If you have, type threshold. Not for me. For yourself. A pause. "You can't go back and change the beginning," I said, "but you can start where you are and change the ending." C.S. Lewis. I leaned in gently. "What ending are you ready to rewrite today?" No music. No transition. Just stillness. Letting them feel what I had felt. Back at home, I lit a single candle on the kitchen counter. No celebration. Just a soft flicker that didn't ask for attention. I pulled the doll out from its box, the one I bought for Evie and never gave her. I placed it on the bookshelf beside a small porcelain bird Walter had once carved for me. Not everything had to be returned. Some things could stay, if I chose them. I brewed tea. Chamomile. I sat, hands around the cup, warmth bleeding slowly into my palms. I touched the corner of the deed still sitting open. Then I reached for the folder labeled, "My Legacy." I opened it, and without hesitation, slid the deed inside. This one's for me. Outside, snow still drifted. But inside, I didn't feel cold anymore. My phone buzzed once more. Video message. Evie Bayard. I opened it. Evie appeared on screen, bundled in a purple scarf, waving. Miss you, D. My eyes brimmed, but my chest stayed calm. I smiled back, touched the screen lightly, then closed the laptop. The window in front of me reflected soft light now. No shadows. The morning light drifted in softly, filtered through the frost-laced window panes. The house was still, no creaking floorboards, no buzzing phone. Just breath, slow and steady. I opened my laptop. The family group chat sat silent, no pings, no dots dancing at the bottom of the screen. For the first time, I felt no pull to refresh it. I leaned back in my chair, cradled by the hush. This wasn't loneliness. It was space. Finally mine. For years, I said out loud, I heard everything but my own voice. Today I hear it clearly. I opened the deed file one last time. Saved it under a new name, closed chapter. Outside, the snow covered yesterday's footprints. They led away from my house, not toward it. That felt right. On the shelf, the gift for Evie caught my eye again. The ribbon still snug, the paper untouched. I took it down, held it in my hands for a moment, then added a small note inside. With love, when you're ready. I sealed the package, addressed it to Celeste's home, pickup only, no delivery. My kindness had new terms now. My generosity didn't mean surrender. Walking to the post box in the crisp morning air, I felt the weight of it all lift, not with drama, but in layers, like snow shedding from a tree. At the corner store, I bought myself a cup of hot cocoa. Marshmallows. No occasion, no explanation. Just because I could. Later, I faced the camera. Have you ever given so much, I said, you forgot who you were giving to? I paused, then asked, if you could send one message to your younger self today, what would it be? I smiled gently and added, Maya Angelou once said, you alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anybody. I held up the note I'd written for Evie, let the camera linger. Leave your one-line message below, I invited. Let's rewrite our stories together. The red light on the camera faded. I stepped outside again, boots crunching into fresh snow. The air was sharp, clean. I walked to the edge of my property, then passed by the Quinn Bayard house across the street. Its windows were dark, curtains drawn. I didn't glance at it. I didn't need to. Walter's words echoed gently, your life isn't built from locked doors, Marla. It's built from open paths. I stopped at a small clearing, once home to a snowman Evie helped build. Now it was just undisturbed snow. I lay down and carved a snow angel, arms spread, eyes closed to the sky. I was never the loser they thought I was, I whispered. I was the one who walked away when the game was over. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't check it. I let it ring and moved on. Back home, I lit a single candle on the kitchen counter. No celebration, just warmth. I poured tea, jasmine this time. I didn't sit at my work desk. I sat at the table, the one I never used just for myself. I placed the note for Evie in the top drawer. Not hidden, just waiting. This season doesn't need a winner, I said quietly. It needs a home. I picked up a novel from the shelf, something fiction, something light. For no one else but me. The snow still drifted past the window, but for once, I wasn't waiting for it to stop. I stood by the glass, tea in hand, watching flakes spin like soft confetti in the breeze. I wasn't a loser, I said, voice calm. I just changed the rules. I turned from the window, walked toward the living room where sunlight warmed the rug and the candle's flame danced steady and low.